Something happened just 2 weeks ago that I can't explain, and even now, sitting in my study surrounded by years of scientific journals and textbooks, my hands are shaking. My name is Dr. Arthur Vance. For 30 years, I've been a professor of theoretical physics in Boston, devoted to what can be measured, observed, and proven. I always believed that if it couldn't be calculated, it didn't exist. I taught my students to see the universe as a machine and governed by laws like thermodynamics, gravity, and entropy. Faith? I thought it was just a comforting illusion, a way for people to cope with the unknown. I loved my wife, Sarah, but I often looked down on her quiet prayers, seeing them as a harmless hobby like knitting or gardening. I never prayed. I never looked at the night sky with wonder, only with calculation. I saw nuclear fusion in the stars, not the handiwork of a creator. But 2 weeks ago, the equations I built my life on were shattered by a love that defies all physics. Before I go any further, I need you to understand that this isn't just a story about a near-death experience. It is a warning. It is a roadmap. It is a testimony about a series of events set to unfold in January 2026, just a few short weeks from now. I am not writing this to gain followers or sell books. I am writing this because I was dead, and I was sent back with a message that burns in my chest like a fire I cannot extinguish. It was Tuesday, late November. The New England winter was settling in early. It was a miserable gray evening, the kind where the rain feels more like ice. I had just finished a grueling faculty meeting where I had argued passionately against the inclusion of a philosophy of religion course in the science curriculum. I remember saying, "We deal in facts here, not fantasies." I left the university feeling triumphant, arrogant, and tired. I decided to cycle home, as I often did, despite the weather. I found clarity in the rhythm of the pedals. As I rode through the slick streets of Boston, my mind was still racing with arguments. I was calculating the friction coefficients of my tires on the wet asphalt, thinking about the grading waiting for me at home. I was so focused on the math of the moment that I didn't see the delivery truck. It ran a red light at an intersection near the river. I didn't even have time to brake. I heard the screech of tires, a terrible tearing sound, and then I felt the impact. It wasn't pain, not at first. It was a massive, crushing pressure, like the entire weight of the world collapsing onto my chest. I remember the sound of my carbon fiber bike frame shattering, a sound like a gunshot. Then I hit the pavement. The world went sideways. I saw the rain falling horizontally. I saw the headlights of the truck looming over me like angry eyes. Then came the pain, a white-hot spike through my chest that stole my breath. And then, nothing. The silence was instant. The darkness was absolute. But this wasn't the sleep I had always told my students death would be. It wasn't the cessation of consciousness. It was a detachment. I felt myself stepping out of my body, the way one steps out of a heavy, wet coat. I was standing there on the street, looking down. I saw my body. It was a gruesome sight, twisted at an unnatural angle. The chest caved in. I saw the truck driver stumbling out of his cab, screaming into his phone. I saw a woman with a red umbrella running toward me, dropping her groceries. I wanted to tell them, "It's okay, I'm right here," but I had no voice. I was pure consciousness, observing the scene with a strange, detached curiosity. Then the street began to fade. The rain, the asphalt, the screaming driver, they all dissolved into a gray mist. I felt a pulling sensation, not up or down, but inward, as if I were being pulled through the center of an atom. I found myself standing in a place that defied all geometry. It looked like a floor of glass, extending infinitely in all directions. Below me, I could see galaxies spinning, nebulas birthing stars, the vast, beautiful machinery of the universe. But it wasn't cold, it was warm. The space was filled with a substance that felt like water, but it was air, a living atmosphere. And then I saw him. He didn't walk toward me, he was simply there. I had expected in my atheistic musings that if I were wrong, I would see an old man on a throne or perhaps a blinding energy field. But I saw a man. He was standing about 10 feet away. He was composed of light, not reflected light like the moon, but generating light, like the sun. Yet, I could look at him without hurting my eyes. He had a form, a face. He looked Middle Eastern, with features that seemed ancient and young all at once. His robes were woven from something that looked like liquid starlight, but it was his eyes that undid me. As a scientist, I deal in data. But there is no unit of measurement for what I saw in those eyes. It was an ocean of compassion. It was a depth of knowledge that made all the libraries on Earth look like a single grain of sand. He looked at me, and I felt him know me. He didn't just see Arthur Vance. He saw the boy who cried when his dog died. He saw the teenager who fell in love with physics because he wanted to control his world. He saw the man who mocked his wife's prayers because he was secretly afraid she was right. I fell to my knees, not because I had to, but because my legs could no longer support the weight of my own ego. It crumbled instantly. "Arthur," he said. His voice was not a sound wave traveling through the air. It was a resonance. It vibrated in the center of my being. It was the sound of the ocean, the sound of the wind, the sound of the first atom splitting. It was the voice of authority. "You have spent a lifetime studying the laws of my house," he said gently, "yet you never introduced yourself to the architect." I tried to speak, but my thoughts were a jumbled mess of shame and awe. I didn't know," I stammered, my voice sounding small in that vast place. I thought it was just math. I thought it was just chance." He stepped closer. The warmth radiating from him was like standing in front of a blast furnace, but it didn't burn, it healed. "I know," he said. "You looked for me in the microscope, but you closed your eyes to the spirit. You measured the dimensions of the canvas, but refused to acknowledge the painter. But Arthur, I love you too much to let you end in the dark." He reached out a hand. It was a hand of light, yet it looked solid, strong. "Stand up," he commanded. "I have not brought you here for judgment. I have brought you here for an assignment. The world you just left is running out of time, and I am about to shake the foundations of what your people believe is real." He gestured to the space around us. The galaxies below faded, and suddenly I was looking at the Earth. It was beautiful. Blue marble hanging in the dark, but I could see things I never saw with my eyes. I saw dark tundrils wrapping around the continents, fear, greed, deception. But I also saw spikes of golden light shooting up from homes, churches, hospitals, prayers. "Watch," Jesus said. "The month of January in the year 2026 is a threshold. It is a beginning and an end. I am going to peel back the veil." The vision zoomed in. I felt like we were hovering just above the atmosphere. I could see the calendar turning in my mind, January 6th, 2026. "The first sign," Jesus said, "will be silence." I watched the Earth below. It was morning in New York, afternoon in London, evening in Tokyo. The world was loud. I could hear the cacophony of it, the roar of jet engines, the honking of cars, the shouting of traders on stock floors, the constant hum of the internet and electricity. It was a chaotic noise that never ceased. Then he raised his hand. In an instant, the winds stopped. I don't mean they slowed down, I mean the atmosphere froze in place. I watched the oceans. The waves, which had been crashing against the shores of California and Australia, simply smoothed out. They didn't freeze into ice. They became like liquid glass. The surface of the Atlantic became a mirror. I saw a pilot in a cockpit flying over the Midwest. He tapped his headset, looking confused. The turbulence was gone. The plane was gliding through air that felt solid, smooth. He looked out the window and saw a flock of geese. They weren't flapping. They were gliding toward the ground, landing softly in fields, silent. I saw a woman in a kitchen in Paris. She was arguing with her husband. Suddenly, she stopped. The wind that had been rattling the window pane ceased. The birds singing in the cage stopped. She put a hand to her chest, looking terrified. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. "Hear what?" her husband asked. "Nothing," she said. "I hear absolutely nothing." Jesus spoke to me as I watched this global stillness. "I'm going to pause the breath of the earth, Arthur. For 1 hour on January 6th, nature will bow. The winds will not blow. The birds will not sing. The oceans will not roar. I am creating a vacuum of silence so that for the first time in a century, humanity will have no choice but to hear the beating of their own hearts." I saw the reaction. I saw news anchors in studios tapping their earpieces, their faces pale. They tried to speak, but the air felt heavy, thick with a presence they couldn't explain. I saw soldiers on a battlefield in Eastern Europe lowering their rifles because the sudden unnatural silence made the idea of violence seem impossible. "This is the great hush," Jesus said. "It is not a punishment. It is an invitation. I am shouting in the silence. I am asking them, who controls the wind? Is it your climate models or is it me? The vision held for what felt like an hour, and then slowly the wind returned. But the world was different. I saw people walking out of their homes, looking at the sky, tears streaming down their faces. They didn't know what had happened, but they knew they had been in the presence of something holy. The scene shifted. The timeline moved forward. January 13th, 2026. They will seek a scientific explanation for the silence, Jesus said, his voice tinged with sadness. They will say it was an atmospheric pressure anomaly, so I will give them a sign they cannot explain with pressure. I saw the night side of the Earth. It was deep winter. Usually, the aurora borealis, the northern lights, confines itself to the poles. I had lectured on this. It is the interaction of solar particles with the Earth's magnetic field. It is physics. But what I saw next defied physics. I saw the sky erupt in color, not just at the North Pole, but everywhere. I saw the Great Pyramids in Egypt bathed in shimmering curtains of violet and emerald green. I saw the Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio de Janeiro silhouetted against a sky that burned with deep crimson light. I saw the streets of Los Angeles, usually bright with neon, dimmed by a celestial light show that turned the smog into a canvas of gold and blue. I saw a scientist at an observatory in Chile. He was looking at his instruments, then at the sky, then back at the instruments. He was weeping. He slammed his fist on the desk. "The solar readings are normal," he screamed. "There is no solar storm. This shouldn't be happening." "The midnight dawn," Jesus whispered. "I am painting the sky. I am showing them that light does not belong to the sun. It belongs to me. I will illuminate the equator. I will make the night shine like the day." I watched as people poured out of their houses. In the vision, the light wasn't just visual. It had a feeling. It felt like electricity, but soft. I saw families in India standing on their flat roofs, holding hands, their faces upturned, bathed in purple light. I saw old men in Russia falling to their knees in the snow. The light seemed to penetrate buildings. I saw a hospital ward where the patients were bathed in this strange, shifting light coming through the windows. It brought a peace so deep that pain seemed to evaporate. "They will try to call it a geomagnetic storm," Jesus said, "but the scientists will know. They will look at their data and see that the sun was quiet. They will have to admit that this light has no source in the natural world." The vision was so real, so vivid that I could smell the ozone in the air. I could feel the static on my skin. I turned to Jesus. "Why?" I asked. "Why are you showing them this?" He looked at me, and his expression was one of intense urgency. "Because they are sleepwalking, Arthur. They are walking off a cliff with their eyes on their phones. I am flashing the lights to wake them up before it is too late." The timeline moved again. We were moving deeper into the month. January 20th, 2026. "The eyes have seen," Jesus said. "Now the bodies must feel." I watched the earth again. This time, nothing visible happened in the sky. But I saw a ripple move across the land. It started in the ocean and moved across the continents. It was a sound, a low, deep frequency. I saw it hit the coast of Africa first. I saw animals, elephants, lions, gazelles, stop moving and put their heads to the ground. Then it hit the cities. I saw people in office buildings in London stop typing. They looked around, confused. It was a vibration, a hum that seemed to come from the core of the planet. It wasn't violent like an earthquake. The ground didn't crack, buildings didn't fall, but everything vibrated. It was a resonant note. As a physicist, I know that everything has a resonant frequency. This was the resonant frequency of the human soul. I saw a man in a coffee shop in Seattle drop his cup. He grabbed the table. The hum was in his bones. It was a sound that made you want to cry, a sound that made you feel incredibly small and incredibly safe at the same time. "The earth's vibration," Jesus explained. "The stones are crying out. For generations, my creation has groaned under the weight of sin and bloodshed. On this day, I will allow the earth to sing its song of groaning. It will bring men to their knees." I watched as the hum intensified. It wasn't deafening, but it was all-consuming. I saw people falling to their knees, not in pain, but because the vibration made standing feel unnatural. It was a posture of surrender. In that posture, thousands of people began to pray spontaneously. I saw a stockbroker on Wall Street, a man who looked like he hadn't prayed in 40 years, kneeling on the trading floor, clutching his chest, weeping as the floor hummed beneath him. "They will search for tectonic shifts," Jesus said. They will check the fault lines. They will find the earth is stable. The shaking is not geological. It is spiritual. I felt the vibration in my own spirit as I watched. It was a call home. It was the earth reminding us that we are made of dust, and to dust we shall return, but the spirit belongs to God. The vision faded, and Jesus turned to me. The warmth of the place intensified. "There is more, Arthur," he said. "The world is addicted to lies. They feed on deception. They drink falsehood like water. The next event is the one that will anger the powerful the most." He waved his hand, and the scene shifted to January 27th. I saw a massive web of glowing lines wrapping the earth, the internet, the satellite networks, the fiber optic cables. It was the nervous system of the modern world. "Watch the screens," he commanded. I looked down into Times Square. I looked into living rooms in Shanghai. I looked at smartphones in the hands of teenagers in Brazil. Suddenly, the content changed. It wasn't a hack. It wasn't a guy in a hoodie typing code. It was a divine interruption. I saw the news feeds cut out. I saw the social media apps freeze. And in their place, videos began to play. But these weren't produced videos. They were raw footage. I saw a closed-door meeting of a pharmaceutical board. I heard them laughing about the side effects of a drug they were pushing on children. I saw the date stamp on the video. It was from 2 days prior. I saw a politician, a man known for his family values, accepting a briefcase of cash from a known crime syndicate leader. The audio was crystal clear. I saw a religious leader, a man who preached poverty, looking at blueprints for a third private jet, mocking his donors. "The mirror of truth," Jesus said. His voice was stern, like thunder rolling in the distance. "I am going to bypass their firewalls. I am going to override their encryptions. For one day, the screens that they use to spread darkness will only show the light." I watched the chaos. I saw people screaming at their televisions. I saw leaders running out of press conferences as their own private conversations played on the monitors behind them. It was absolute panic among the elite, but among the common people, there was a stunned silence. The veil was being ripped away. "They will try to shut down the power grids," Jesus said, "but the screens will stay on. I am holding the connection open. They must see who they have been following." I was trembling. As a man who valued evidence, this was the ultimate evidence. It was the exposure of data that had been hidden. "Lord," I whispered, using a title I had never used in my life, "they will not survive this. The society will collapse." "The structures built on sand will collapse," he corrected, "but the rock will remain. I am clearing the debris so that the foundation can be laid." The vision shifted one last time. We were at the end of the month, January 31st, 2026. The atmosphere changed completely. The sternness was gone. The heavy vibration was gone. The air filled with a scent like rain on dry soil, like blooming jasmine, like fresh bread. It was the smell of life. "The final event of the month," Jesus said, his face radiant with joy, "is my favorite." I saw the hospitals of the world. I saw the cancer wards, the ICUs, the hospices. I saw places of despair where the air smelled of antiseptic and death. Then the breath came. It wasn't a wind. It was a wave of golden light that rolled through the corridors. I saw a little girl in a hospital in London. She was bald, pale, hooked up to machines, her parents sleeping in chairs beside her, exhausted. The golden light touched her bed. Suddenly, the monitors spiked. Her heart rate normalized. The color flushed back into her cheeks. She opened her eyes. She sat up. She pulled the tubes out of her nose. "Mommy?" she said. Her mother woke up, looked at her and screamed, not in terror, but in pure shock. I saw this happening room after room, hospital after hospital. I saw twisted limbs straightening. I saw clouded eyes clearing. As a man in a coma for 5 years suddenly take a deep breath and ask for water. Doctors were running through the halls, checking charts, shouting for nurses. "It's impossible." I heard one doctor say in the vision, "The tumor is gone. It's just gone." The breath of mercy, Jesus said softly. "I'm going to empty the wards. Not all of them, but enough to show the world that I am the Lord who heals. Science will have no answer. Biology will have no explanation. The only diagnosis will be miracle." I stood there on that glass floor, weeping openly. I thought of my own arrogance, how I had mocked miracles. And here I was, watching a tsunami of grace wash over the world. "This is the harvest, Arthur," Jesus said. "I am waking them up with silence. I am calling them with light. I am shaking them with the earth. I am showing them the truth on their screens, and I am healing them with my touch. January is the invitation. He turned to me then, and the visions faded. We were back in the quiet starlight. You must go back, he said. I don't want to, I pleaded. Please, it's too cold down there. It's too hard. Let me stay. You must go, he repeated, firm but kind. You have a voice. They respect you. You are a man of science. When you speak, they listen. You must tell them that the variables have changed. You must tell them that the architect is entering the building. They won't believe me, I said. They'll say I had brain damage from the accident. They'll say it's hallucination. I know, he said. So I will give you a signature. He stepped close to me. He raised his hand, that hand of living light, and placed it directly on my chest, right where the truck had crushed my ribs. I felt a sear of heat. It was intense, like a branding iron, but it didn't hurt. It felt like fire and ice mixing together. It felt like life rushing into me. This is my seal, he said. When you doubt, look at your heart. Arthur, he said, his voice fading as the world began to spin. Tell them I am coming. Tell them to look up. And then I fell. I fell through the glass floor, through the stars, through the clouds. I felt the wet pavement. I felt the pain rushing back, but different now. I gasped. The air tasted like gasoline and rain. He's back, someone shouted. I have a pulse. We have a pulse. I opened my eyes. I was staring up at the gray sky of Boston. A paramedic was hovering over me, looking terrified. Stay with us, buddy. Stay with us. I tried to speak, but I coughed. I was rushed to the hospital. The surgeries took hours. My legs were broken. My shoulder was shattered. But the doctors were confused about one thing. When I woke up in the trauma unit, my wife Sarah was there, holding my hand, her eyes red from crying. My colleague, Dr. James Miller, a man I had known for 20 years, was standing at the foot of the bed holding a chart. He looked pale. Arthur, James said, you gave us a scare. You were gone, clinically dead for 8 minutes. I know, I rasped, but Arthur, James hesitated. The impact, the truck hit you square in the chest. By all rights, your ribcage should be dust. Your heart should have been crushed. I looked at him. I remembered the hand of light. Check my chest, I whispered. James looked at Sarah, then gently pulled the hospital gown down. There was silence in the room. There were no bruises on my chest. There were no broken ribs protruding. There was no redness from the impact. Instead, running diagonally across my chest, exactly where the truck had hit me, was a scar. But it wasn't a fresh, bloody wound. It was a long, thin, silvery line. It looked like a scar that had healed for 50 years. The skin was smooth, white, and perfect. James touched it with a gloved hand. This is impossible, he muttered. Tissue doesn't knit like this, not in hours, not even in years. It looks ancient. I looked at the scar. I felt the warmth radiating from it. It wasn't just a healed wound. It was a signature. It's not biology, James, I said, tears filling my eyes. It's a receipt. The days following my return to the land of the living were a blur of beeping monitors, hushed conversations, and the sterile smell of antiseptic. But for me, the hospital room was just a thin overlay on a much deeper reality. While my body was knitting itself back together, my legs in casts, my shoulder immobilized, my mind was still vibrating with the frequency of that place of light. The doctors called it post-traumatic stress. They brought in psychiatrists who spoke to me in soft, condescending tones about how the brain constructs elaborate narratives to cope with near-death trauma. They tried to explain away the scar on my chest as a medical anomaly, a freak occurrence of rapid coagulation and tissue compression. They had a Latin name for it, of course. They always do. But they couldn't explain why the scar was warmer than the rest of my body. They couldn't explain why, when they measured my brain waves during sleep, I showed activity patterns that resembled deep meditation or something they had never seen before. I didn't argue with them. I realized very quickly that you cannot explain quantum mechanics to someone who only believes in arithmetic. Instead, I spent those long nights in the hospital bed staring at the ceiling, letting the memories of the encounter unspool. You see, the conversation I had with Jesus wasn't linear. In that place outside of time, communication is instantaneous and massive. When he spoke to me, he didn't just give me 5 dates. He downloaded an entire tapestry of events into my consciousness. It was like receiving a massive zip file that was now slowly unpacking itself in my mind. As the painkillers wore off and my mind cleared, specific scenes, visions I hadn't initially recalled began to surface with terrifying clarity. These weren't just the major signposts of January, they were the connective tissue, the days between the miracles, the human reaction to the divine intervention. I remember waking up at 3 a.m. on my third night in the hospital. The ward was quiet. Sarah was asleep in the chair next to me. Suddenly, the hospital room dissolved. I wasn't asleep. My eyes were open. But the overlay of the vision was stronger than the physical room. I was seeing January 2nd, 2026. In the vision, I was hovering over the coast of Japan. I saw the fishing fleets leaving port, but something was wrong. The nets were coming up empty. But it wasn't just empty, the fish were fleeing. I saw massive schools of tuna and mackerel moving in unison, swimming deep, swimming away from the fault lines, away from the coasts. They knew. Then the scene shifted to a park in London. It was cold, gray. I saw the pigeons, thousands of them, taking flight simultaneously. They weren't circling, they were leaving the city. I saw stray dogs in Mumbai huddling together in the centers of open fields, whining, refusing to go near buildings. Jesus' voice came back to me, echoing from the memory. My creation knows my voice better than my children do. Before the silence comes, the innocent will prepare. I saw scientists at a geological monitoring station in Iceland. They were looking at their screens, puzzled. The background noise, one of them said, tapping a monitor. It's dropping. The microtremors that are always there, they are smoothing out. They thought their equipment was broken. They didn't realize that the Earth itself was holding its breath in anticipation of January 6th. I gasped and sat up in bed, the vision fading, but the dread lingering. The physiological reaction was so intense, it set off my heart monitor. A nurse rushed in, but I waved her away. How could I tell her that I had just seen the animals of the world preparing for a holy hush? 2 days later, Dr. James Miller came to visit me. James and I had been colleagues for 20 years. We had co-authored papers on particle physics. He was a good man, a rational man, a man who trusted the peer review process above all else. He sat on the edge of my bed looking at the charts. Arthur, he said, I have to ask you, the things you said when you first woke up, about the dates, about January. I looked at him. You think I'm crazy, James. I think you went through massive trauma, he said gently. Hypoxia can cause vivid hallucinations. The brain tries to make sense of the shutdown. Look at the scar, James, I said quietly. He looked away, uncomfortable. We're looking into that. A dermatologist from Harvard is coming to see it tomorrow. It's unusual. It's not unusual, I said. It's impossible. And you know it. I leaned forward, ignoring the pain in my ribs. James, listen to me. On January 4th, 2 days before the silence, there will be a disruption in the magnetosphere. The satellites, specifically the communication constellations, are going to drift. Not much, just a fraction of a degree. But it will cause a momentary lag in global GPS. The engineers will blame it on a solar wind that didn't happen. Watch for it. James sighed, patting my arm. Rest, Arthur. Just rest. But I couldn't rest. The visions were relentless. They were filling in the gaps. I saw the days following the January 6th silence. I saw the confusion. In the vision, it was January 8th. I was inside a closed-door meeting at the United Nations in New York. The room was soundproof, the mood tense. I saw diplomats shouting at each other. It was a weapon! A general from a superpower's nation was yelling. Who has the technology to stop the wind? Who can dampen acoustic waves on a global scale? It wasn't a weapon, a scientist in the corner whispered, looking terrified. We have data from the ocean buoys. The energy required to still the Atlantic Ocean for 1 hour exceeds the total energy output of the human race for the last 1,000 years. This wasn't us. The room went silent. They couldn't accept the alternative, so they agreed to a lie. I saw them drafting the press release. They would call it a rare atmospheric pressure anomaly caused by sudden stratospheric warming. They were weaving a blanket of scientific jargon to cover the nakedness of their fear. They will lie, Jesus had told me. They will try to stitch the veil back together, but I will tear it again. The visions continued, growing more specific. I saw the January 12th precursors to the midnight dawn. I saw the sky over the Vatican. It was night. The Pope was standing on a balcony looking up. He wasn't praying, he was trembling. The sky was already turning a deep, bruised purple, pulsating with a rhythm that matched a heartbeat. He turned to his cardinal and whispered, "It is the sign of the Son of Man." But he didn't go to the microphone. He went back inside. Fear paralyzes even the faithful when the reality outweighs the ritual. I was discharged from the hospital a week later, sent home in a wheelchair with a prescription for painkillers I didn't take, and a referral to a psychiatrist I wouldn't see. My home, usually a sanctuary of quiet study, felt different. The books on my shelves, Newton, Einstein, Hawking, seemed small. They were describing the mechanics of the cage. They knew nothing of the hand that built it. My wife, Sarah, was my anchor. She was the only one who didn't look at me with pity. One evening, as she was changing the dressing on my surgical wounds, avoiding the silvery scar which she treated with a reverence that made me want to weep, I broke down. "I can't carry this, Sarah," I sobbed. "I'm a physicist. I deal in facts. This is too big. If I speak, they'll destroy my career. They'll lock me away." She stopped her work and looked me in the eye. "Arthur, your career died on that pavement. You are not a professor anymore. You are a witness. A witness doesn't have to be popular. He just has to be truthful." She was right. I went to my study and began to write. I wrote down everything, and as I wrote, the visions of the days of the Hum, January 1820, flooded my mind with terrifying detail. I saw a submarine, deep in the Mariana Trench. It was a stealth vessel, nuclear-powered. The crew was silent, disciplined. Then the vibration started. It wasn't sound, it was resonance. The hull of the submarine began to sing. The sonar screens went white with noise. The captain was screaming orders, thinking the reactor was breaching, but the engineer looked at the reactor core and saw it was stable. The sound was coming from the water, from the rock, from the trench itself. "The deep calls to deep," the voice of light whispered in my memory. I saw a scene in a kindergarten class in Brazil on that same day. The children were napping. Suddenly, they all sat up. They weren't scared. They were smiling. They began to hum, matching the pitch of the earth. The teacher was terrified, trying to hush them. But the children were tuned into a frequency she couldn't hear yet. One little boy pointed to the floor and said, "The ground is happy, teacher. The ground is saying his name." These microvisions were showing me that the events of January weren't just spectacular displays for the news. They were intimate intrusions into the reality of every living thing. Listen to the silence, because the architect is clearing his throat. I have one final thing to tell you. The specific instructions he gave me for the aftermath, for what we must do when the month ends and the world is changed forever. Because January is just the door. What lies beyond it is what we were actually born for. It is Friday, December 12th, 2025. The calendar on my desk, a gift from the university administration I no longer serve, stares back at me. To anyone else, it is just a date, a mundane Friday in midwinter. But to me, it is a marker on a countdown clock that is ticking louder than the beating of my own heart. The scar on my chest, that silvery impossible signature of the divine, is throbbing with a rhythmic warmth today. It knows. The time is close. I have told you of the silence. I have told you of the lights, the hum, the exposed screens, and the healing breath. But I have not told you the hardest part. I have not told you what happens after the miracles. When I stood on that floor of glass, bathed in the living light of the Nazarene, I made the mistake of thinking that once these events occurred, the whole world would simply bow down. I thought, how can they deny it? If the wind stops and the sky burns and the sick are healed, surely the debate is over. Surely atheism will evaporate like mist in the morning sun. Jesus looked at me then with a sorrow that seemed to span centuries. "Arthur," he said, "you are a student of physics. You understand inertia. A body in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. But you must also understand the inertia of the human heart. There are those who love the dark so much that if I were to replace the sun with my own face, they would simply put on sunglasses and call it an eclipse." He then showed me the aftermath. He showed me the month of February 2026. And this, my friends, is why I'm writing to you. Not just to warn you of the events, but to prepare you for the war of narratives that will follow. In the vision, I saw the days following the breath of mercy on January 31st. The hospitals were empty of the terminally ill, and cancer wards were closed for cleaning because there were no patients. The world was in a state of absolute shock. But the vacuum did not last long. I saw the Great Denial on February 3rd. I saw news anchors, the same ones who had trembled during the silence, regaining their composure. The script had been written. The narrative was being deployed. Mass hysteria, they called it. Psychosomatic suggestion. I saw a panel of experts on a major news network. A renowned psychologist was explaining the healings. It's the placebo effect amplified by global social contagion, he said, sounding very academic, very rational. People believed they were being healed because of the atmospheric anomalies, and their bodies released massive amounts of dopamine and endorphins. It's a biological trick, not a divine intervention. I saw government officials in Europe and North America passing emergency laws. They weren't banning religion, they were banning unverified medical misinformation. They were classifying the testimonies of the healed as dangerous propaganda that could destabilize public health systems. They will try to steal the miracle, Jesus told me. They will try to put the lightning back in the bottle and label it science, and many will believe them, Arthur. Many will choose the comfortable lie over the terrifying truth. Because if they admit it was me, they have to change their lives. If they admit it was mass hysteria, they can go back to sleep. This is the danger. The events of January will be undeniable, but the interpretation of them will be a battlefield. So here are the instructions. Before I left that place of light, before I was sent back to my broken body on the wet asphalt, Jesus gave me a blueprint. He didn't give me a theology textbook. He gave me a survival guide for the spirit. He spoke to me in the language of a builder, an architect. He said, when the shaking begins, do not look for the cathedrals, look for the tables. I didn't understand at first, but he explained. The large institutions, the great religious systems that have become businesses, they will crack under the weight of this glory, he said. They are built for maintenance, not for movement. When the harvest comes, they will not have the nets to hold it. He showed me a vision of the new arks. They weren't wooden boats. They were living rooms. They were break rooms in factories. They were park benches. Tell my people to build small, he commanded. Tell them to open their homes. When the screens show the darkness of their leaders on January 27th, the people will run from the palaces. They will be looking for a door that is open, a pot of coffee that is hot, and a heart that is not afraid. Be that door. Instruction 1, the sanctuary of the home. If you're reading this, you are the designated captain of an ark. Your home is to be a sanctuary. You don't need to be a pastor. You don't need a degree. You just need to be unafraid. When the silence happens, invite your neighbors over. Don't preach at them. Just sit with them. Break bread. The vision showed me that the greatest miracles of 2026 will not happen on stages. They will happen over dinner tables. The spiritual quantum entanglement, as I now call it, happens when 2 or 3 are gathered in his name. The probability of the miraculous approaches 100% in the presence of unity. Instruction 2, do not engage the mockers. This was a hard one for me. As an academic, I love an argument. I love to prove I am right. Do not cast your pearls, Jesus warned. In February, when the Great Denial begins, the anger of the skeptics will be hot. They will be terrified, and terror looks like rage. Do not argue with them. Do not try to prove the silence was God using meteorological data. You cannot use logic to heal a spiritual wound. Love them, feed them, but do not debate them. Save your energy for the harvest. Instruction 3, the supply line. The systems of the world will falter, he said. The supply chains will tremble when the corruption is exposed. I saw shortages, not a famine, but disruptions. The Mirror of Truth event on January 27th will topple CEOs and politicians, causing temporary chaos in markets. Tell them to be like Joseph, he said. Prepare, not out of fear, like the survivalists, but out of charity. Have extra food, have extra water, have extra medicine. Not to hoard for yourself, but so you can be the one who gives when the store shelves are empty. The world hoards. My children share. This will be your greatest testimony. Instruction 4, the frequency of truth. They will censor the screens, he warned. After the exposure, they will try to shut down the channels of truth. I saw the internet becoming a restricted zone. Algorithms will be tuned to suppress the name of Jesus. You must become the network, he said. Face to face, word of mouth. The primitive ways are the unhackable ways. Memorize the word. Keep it in your heart, for the day may come when it is deleted from your devices. As the instructions concluded, the atmosphere in that celestial place shifted one last time. The teaching was over. The time for departure had come. I looked at Jesus. I looked at the hands that had spun the galaxies, the eyes that had wept for Lazarus. The physics of his presence was overwhelming. The sheer density of his reality made the earth seem like a shadowland. Lord, I asked, my voice trembling, what if I fail? I am just a man. I am a man who spent 58 years denying you. How can I lead anyone? He stepped into my personal space. The light that composed him didn't burn, it embraced. He reached out and touched the center of my chest, the exact spot where the truck had impacted, the exact spot where the silvery scar now sits. Arthur, he whispered, and the sound was like the wind in the trees, like the roar of a lion, like the hush of a mother. You will not fail because you will not be the one doing it. I am not sending you back to work for me. I am sending you back to let me work through you. The interface is open. He leaned in, his face inches from mine. And remember this, he said, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that burned the promise into my DNA. I am not coming to take sides, I'm coming to take over. The governments of this world are expiring. The lease of the lies is up. Tell them, Arthur, tell them that the landlord is returning. And then he pushed me. It was a gentle push, right on the chest. I fell backward, tumbling through the star fields, through the nebulas, accelerating past the speed of light. I felt the heavy, wet, cold blanket of the Earth's atmosphere wrapping around me. I felt the pain of the broken ribs before they were healed, the grit of the asphalt, the taste of blood. I woke up screaming, not in pain, but in separation. I wanted to go back. I wanted the light. But then I felt the heat on my chest. I looked down, through the torn shirt, through the blood, and saw the silver line forming, knitting the skin together before my eyes. That was 2 weeks ago. I am sitting here now, in my study. Outside, the Boston wind is howling. The world is going about its business. The news is talking about interest rates and celebrity scandals. They don't know. They don't hear the footsteps approaching the door. But you do. If you have read this far, you are now a witness. You cannot claim ignorance. You have the timeline. January 6th, the silence. January 13th, the lights. January 20th, the vibration. January 27th, the exposure. January 31st, the healing. And February, the choice. I am done with my old life. I have resigned from the university. I have cleared out my office. My colleagues think I have lost my mind due to the accident. They look at the scar and call it a medical anomaly. They look at my eyes and look away because they see something there that frightens them. They see certainty. I am preparing my home. Sarah and I are buying extra rice, extra beans, extra blankets. We are making a list of our neighbors, the widow next door, the young couple across the street, the skeptical postman. We are praying for them by name. We are getting the ark ready. I urge you to do the same. Do not be afraid. Fear is a waste of imagination. What is coming is not the end of the world. It is the end of the illusion. It is the end of the era where we could pretend we were alone in the universe. The physics of grace are about to override the physics of entropy. The architect is entering the building. Check your heart, check your home. Look at the sky. I am Dr. Arthur Vance, former professor of theoretical physics, current witness of the living God, and I am telling you, he is at the door.